This is the first in our summer series, the You Asked For It series. And we've been getting a number of questions. And this is one, and the question's actually so big it's going to take 2 weeks to cover it. And the question is, as it was put on the card, what happens when I die? And it is a question that not just bedevils modern culture, it has every culture. Every culture on earth that has existed has believed in an afterlife. I heard a statistic this week, oddly enough. I still don't know what to do with it. I'm not going to do too much with it other than to say we have, across various cultures, people have cataloged, talked to people, about 25 million stated near-death experiences. Now, I'm not going to put all of those in the same category. Let's just say 60% of them were, the drugs from surgery were still in effect or whatever. You still have 12, 15 million. And it's funny how these near-death experiences aren't like, I experienced this vast void of nothingness. That's not any of them. But here's the popular model. And what we believe about what happens when we die is largely informed by popular culture. In fact, I would distill it down. Our beliefs about what happens when I die are largely based on 3 movies. It's a Wonderful Life, Gladiator, and Ghostbusters. Now, what I mean by that is that Ghostbusters, that people who've gone before us and us when we die, we just kind of drift around in these bodiless spirit forms. I'm not sure about the slime and eating the pizza and all the other stuff, but that exists. It's a Wonderful Life is that when we die, we're all going to become angels. We're waiting to get our wings. We're going to sit around with harps and gold streets and everything else, and we're waiting that. And Gladiator very much is this: when we die, the spirit drifts up and we're going to be reunited with other people before us. Now, there's an issue with that. All of this, angels, wings, harps, floating as a spirit up someplace else, bodiless ghosts roaming around after death, all of these are very, very Greek. They're just not very Christian. We go to funerals today. Now, I'm going to say one thing here. You're about to take an advanced class. So if you feel the rug gently being tugged, I'm not trying to yank it out from anybody, but to move you to a little different place, to a much more robust Christian place. When we go to funerals and say, Uncle Bob is looking down on me right now, we've just gone to the movie Gladiator. And the thing is, it's not very Christian. I'm thankful for Andrew, who got us in a Christian place with his song that's basically quoting from 1 Corinthians, which is where I'm going to be reading a lot of today. Let me explain, and I'm going to use, again, 1 Corinthians 15, the chapter that really deals with this issue. 1 Thessalonians 4 is another one, and there's a bit in Romans 8 and elsewhere. But let me explain. What happens when I die? Let me start with 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 20 and 22. And it says this: "But Christ has indeed been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have been asleep. For since death came through a man, the resurrection of the dead comes also through a man. For as in Adam all die, so in Christ all will be made alive." This is really a ridiculous claim. It is actually the one that a lot of people kind of stop and throw away the concept of faith. This is impossible. Everyone knows you can't rise from the dead. Everyone knows that once you're dead, you're dead. You can't believe in miracles. You can't believe in life after death. You can't believe in any of that. Well, what we're believing is not something that's just kind of made up. It's based on the fact that hundreds of people saw Jesus. They shook his hand. They hugged him. They embraced him. It was physical. They didn't interact with a ghost. They touched a physical body. And then when they told the story, government after government, well, mainly Caesar, but all his governors said, listen, if you don't stop spreading this story, we are going to kill you. And they said, I understand that, but we're not telling the story. All we're doing is telling you what we have seen and heard. But the thing that was really getting them is they were calling this risen Jesus the Son of God. And the thing about Rome is, Caesar loved to be called the Son of God. And if you're calling someone else the Son of God, well, if Jesus is Son of God, that means Caesar isn't. If Jesus is Son of God, that means Trump isn't. If Jesus is Son of God, that means Biden isn't. If Jesus is a Son of God, that means Pritzker isn't. And the thing about people in power is they hate to hear that your allegiance is to something else. Today, just as it was then. Paul even lists the witnesses. If you go through there, he appeared to a lot of different people. It wasn't just the disciples and himself. He lists a number of them through this. Hundreds. And I'm on the wrong page. And that was me. But Paul even said, I saw him. Skeptics today would have you believe that this is a staged, fake story that they concocted to maintain some kind of grip on power. And if you look at the story, there was no power. Not only does Paul list the witnesses, but we have ancient writers like Eusebius, Josephus, Philo, and other non-biblical stories all talk about this Jesus who many claim was risen. There's no reason to expect that these 12 ragtag, plus a few more, it wasn't just 12, people who didn't have power, didn't have influence, weren't from a very respected part of the world, would in fact completely change the world they encountered in a few generations. They weren't just disciplined, it was that they could not say something that they all knew was untrue. Which brings me around to this gentleman. Some of you who are over a certain age will understand who this is. That's Chuck Colson. Chuck Colson was part of Nixon's White House and was implicated in the Watergate cover-up and break-in. Chuck Colson, in prison for Watergate, became a Christian, became a prolific author, and he wrote this. Some of you will recognize this quote. Chuck Colson writes, I know that the resurrection is a fact, and Watergate proved it to me. How? Because 12 men testified that they had seen Jesus raised from the dead. They proclaimed that truth for 40 years, never once denying it. Everyone was beaten, everyone was tortured, everyone was stoned and eventually put in prison. They would not have endured that if it weren't true. Watergate embroiled 12 of the most powerful men in the world, and they couldn't keep alive for 3 weeks. And you're telling me that 12 apostles could keep alive for 40 years at the point of death and pain and torture? Absolutely impossible. That's Chuck Colson. He has a point. One of the things, first I would say, our hope of the resurrection is entirely based on Jesus' resurrection. Not just a hope and a dream. Scripture says that very same power that raised Jesus from the dead is available for us who believe. Moving on to the next text in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 51 and 52. It says, listen, I tell you a mystery. We will not all sleep, but we will all be changed in a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. It's what Andrew sang about. The good news is this, and I mean it's good news. Jesus' resurrection was a physical resurrection, and we will share in that. I think I said to Libby this morning, well before church, she said, "How you doing?" And here's what I said. Have you ever gone to bed and woken up the next morning with a muscle that's either strained or pulled and you have no idea how it happened? That's this morning. We get to a point and all of a sudden aches and pains start to take over. Sometimes we have issues or diseases or syndromes that severely impact life. Scripture is very clear. We look forward to a resurrection. And when we say something like, Uncle Bob is in heaven right now, looking down on us while we look at Uncle Bob in the casket, we're saying a couple different things here that I'm not sure we've thought through. And there's some tension here. I'm going to resolve it in just a second. Give me time. The resurrection we're promised is not some bodiless, spirit-drifting experience. Some of the best experiences of life, I could go down every row here and tap you on the shoulder, and you would say something like, I love walking on a beach with the waves hitting me. I like hearing the sound of a mountain stream rushing out of the mountain. I love the feeling of a breeze hitting me in the face, or if not a breeze, wind as I'm going 70 on a motorcycle. I love the warmth of the sun hitting me in the face. I could go and you could tell me your experiences and thing that you love. And the thing that you love is inevitably tied up to some physicalness. 1 Thessalonians and 1 Corinthians speak of a coming physical resurrection. Romans 8:11, I already partially quoted it. The same Spirit who raised Jesus from the dead will give life to your mortal bodies. Life. This idea of a physical resurrection is very, very, very important. That scene in Gladiators, I know I'm going back, I'm just trying to help us through it. When just after Maximus, that's the name, right? I think just after he dies, you see his kind of spirit lifting up while the body remains. And so this is this spirit thing. Resurrection's bodily. And that's very, very important to remember. You see, we live in a world of decay and death. We're used to it. We are born and we're all aware that there is a time clock. Some of you remember a number of years ago, our friend Donna Redder passed away, and if you were at the funeral, Danny Taylor did the eulogy. And I am this strange person. I get excited by intellectual concepts. And some of you were there, and there was a pastor of that church, and I don't want to... what he said was highly, highly, highly unfortunate. And my wife was next to me, and my wife, about his third sentence out of his mouth, she grabbed my thigh like that. Because she knew that I was battling a temptation to run up and tackle him. And grab the microphone from his mouth. And so I started scribbling furiously because a letter had to be written, and I had to, all this stuff was going through my head. And then Danny got up, and Danny said, I'm going to paraphrase, but it's very close to what he said. He said, when we enter life, we have an idea of how life should happen. We're born, we go through childhood, we grow up, we go through the turbulent teen years, we graduate from high school, maybe we go to college or we enter the job market. At a certain age, we meet the person we're going to marry. We marry, we have children, we watch them grow. They move out of the house, we grow old together, maybe grandkids come in the picture, and then a certain stage of life, when many years have passed, we die. That's this model that's in our head. And when that model doesn't happen, and death happens too quickly, we get angry because that's not right. And here's what he said. He said, it's okay to be angry because when you die out of this order, that is not because it is God's will, perfect or otherwise. It is an example that we live in a world that's governed by the fall and not God's will, and that's why it's right to be angry. And at that point, I thought Dan dropped the microphone and just walked off. But he had other things to say. After that, I did something I don't normally do. I walked up to Danny and I hugged him because of what he had said on that day. So we live with this awareness that there's this time span. We live with this awareness of a ticking clock. And I can't do what I once could. I don't know if, I'm looking at Melissa and Brian, I don't know if Lauren ever told you, about 5-6 years ago, we went to our snowball retreat where we were skiing, and Lauren said she wanted to learn how to ski. And I should go to the class they offer. And I said, no, don't do that. I can do it much quicker. And so we got her skis on and got all her skis on. And I go, are they on? They secure? Yeah, feeling good? Okay, good. And I pushed her over. And I said, now get up. I'll help you. And she got back up and I said, are you ready? Okay, you good? All right. And I pushed her over again. And she said, why are you doing that? I said, that's the toughest thing you'll ever learn to do on skis, is getting up. If you can get up from falling down, you're good. And she got up, and then we got on the bunny hill and came down, and then I said, wait here, and I went down 100 yards, and I said, ski at me. If you get going too fast, I'll kind of catch you or something. We did that a couple times. We went all the way to the top. 3 hours in, she was fine. She was just sailing down the mountain. It was great. I think that's about, I didn't have her long ago. That was the last time I snow skied because maybe I was 53 at the time or something. And when I go snow ski, I like going fast. I like just getting speed up and that sensation. But there's the thing. At 28 and 38, I could fall down and things still bended enough that it would be okay. I don't think that's going on anymore. And while it's been years since I'd fallen, I said, one of these years my luck's going to run out and things just aren't pliable anymore. So right at the end, after all kids done, I went up the top about 3 times and went down as fast as I could, and I went, okay, I'm good now. Because that clock that's going off in my head. We think that way. Let me ask a question. What if that supposed reality is wrong? See, we're not Gnostic, but we live in a Gnostic world. And let me explain that. Gnosticism was this Greek concept that we still inherited, which tells you the physical world is evil. Sometimes you can hear some old Christian song. I can't wait, some glad morning when this life is over, I'll fly away. Get rid of this body, get rid of this life. Again, I understand what they're saying, but that's not Christian. On the 6th day, God created man. He created Adam and Eve. He created the body. And at the end of it, he looked and he says, he called it good. It is good to hold hands with your fiance. It's good to kiss the bride. It's good to feel the breeze hit you in the face. It's good to feel the warm sun. It's good to walk next to a lake. It's good. Our world and the sin in it takes us away from all of that. We still have places in the world that still act that way. There are parts of the world like the Muslim world where parts of the Muslim world, women, you have to go out. You have to be completely covered from head to toe. No little bit of skin can show anywhere. Why? Because, excuse me, your body is evil. Partially Gnostic. So it's good to run. It's good to walk. It's good to feel the spray of water. It's good to catch a fish. Got to throw one in for me. It's good to hit a pure 6-iron. A spirit resurrection denies all of these and allows sin to win. Resurrection will be restorative. The blind will see, the lame will walk, the hurting will not hurt anymore. All the experiences that have created joy will not be gone, only deepened. 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Start at 35 to 38, this should say. But someone will ask, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body will they come? How foolish. What you sow does not come to life until it dies. When you sow, you do not plant the body that will be, but just a seed, perhaps of wheat or of something else. But God gives it a body as he is determined, and to each kind of seed he gives its own body. Let me cut through that just a little bit. Not this week, the previous 2 weeks before that. I always call those 2 weeks apocalypse now at our house because every time you go out, helicopters are attacking me from the maple trees. Everything needed to make a 70-foot tall maple tree is in that seed. And that seed looks nothing like a 70-foot maple tree. In September, up here on the hill, that 500-year-old oak tree will drop acorns. Everything to make another gorgeous black oak is contained in that acorn. And it's linked to the acorn. But what will be can't be until that acorn falls to the ground and dies before new life has come. We think in terms of how. We want to think of time and all of this stuff with the resurrection. Perhaps a better question is not how, but who. When we die, we slip into an eternity and into the arms of Jesus Christ. Time is a created entity only for those of us who are aware of it and alive. What Paul is trying to tell us with this linkage is, in eternity, I will be seen, I will be known, I will be recognized, I will be valued. If you can't wait to hold your mother's hand, your mother that hasn't been here in 30 years, you will get to hold your mother's physical hand. If you're missing the embrace of someone, you will get to feel that embrace. I think of people that I've known through the years who have suffered with an ailment all their lives. Maybe a leg's never worked. Maybe someone was born with cerebral palsy and they've always struggled to get around. They've never known what it was like to run or walk and they've never been able to take a step and not think about that step. Well, they'll be able to run and not grow weary. They'll be able to walk and not grow faint. They'll be able to embrace and run and all the things, maybe see, hear, that they've never known. I've been thinking about an analogy all week about how to put this best into words. Well, coming up in Thanksgiving, I know that's still about 5 months away, we'll collect around tables in homes. And a lot of homes will look something like this. Not everything, but something like this. There'll be a couple children, grown children, maybe have 3 kids. 2 of them you can't see. They'll come with the grandkids, and you can't wait to be with them. Everything is good. And then and the joy will be palpable. And there'll also be that other child that's there begrudgingly. The one that creates tension. You want them there. You want to see them, but you know there'll be things you have to navigate, maybe constantly. And maybe you've had the speech to all the rest of the family. Hey, when Jimmy comes, don't talk about this. And don't mention that. And for Pete's sake, don't even talk about, because you're navigating. And you know, Uncle Joe will be there too. You know Uncle Joe. He makes everything hard for everyone there. But Joe has no place else to go, and after all, he is family. So he's going to be here. Aunt Sheila will be here too. She has cancer. The last year's been rough, and this will probably be the last year that Aunt Sheila's here for Thanksgiving. It's the last one. So we're going to try to make it a good one. Oh, we have to meet in the small house, because the host had to sell their larger home to save money because everything is so much more than it was last year. And so we don't have the big dining room table anymore. So if you have to sit at the card table, don't say anything. No one wants to sit at the card table, but you might have to this year. It's going to be really tight, and there's barely enough room to fit everyone. And it's going to be small enough to just ensure that someone is close enough to get on someone's nerves. I'm just telling you how Thanksgiving dinner is going to go. Everybody be good. That's not how the resurrection is going to be. We tend to talk about spirit drifting up. We tend to talk about body being renewed. Let me tell you what else is there that we don't talk about as much. There's going to be a newfound community like never before. Here's resurrection life. Reverse everything that you've just heard. Here's what I mean by that. We won't have to worry about Aunt Sheila's cancer anymore. In fact, you didn't know Aunt Sheila when she was young. She used to be on the cross-country team. You've just known her since, she's had the issue. You'll get to see. The person we have to navigate, we don't have to navigate anymore. Because the barriers will be dropped. And by the way, the Father's house is plenty big for everyone. That's resurrection life. It's not going to be this spirit just thing where you drift. It's going to be real. It's going to be physical. You will be known. And we look forward to a day. Andrew sang about that day. The dead in Christ shall rise. And we who are alive will be caught up. And together we will meet the Lord in the air. 1 Thessalonians 4 and 1 Corinthians says the same thing. Sometimes in the Christian life, it gets to be about how do I avoid the bad? Sometimes we get thinking about what are the good habits, what things I'm supposed to be doing, what things I'm not supposed to be doing. And it gets to be this very routine thing where we have to remember the good list and the bad list, which is never the Christian life. But sometimes we forget that at its heart is this hope that's created when Jesus rose from the dead. I know that in most churches, somewhere there's a cross. And I understand. And there's nothing wrong with a cross. Let me just say, however, that tens of thousands of people have died on a cross. And I might be light on that. Tens of thousands. But only one has walked out of an empty tomb. And that is why we have hope. And that is why we don't need to live in fear. And that's why we can live with a certain distancing ourselves from that clock. And that's one reason why we have hope today.